Hello, Vanguard students. Welcome to this broadcast today, and I would like to welcome all of our panelists who are here to help us out. We appreciate your taking the time to participate in this discussion. We know that it's going to give our Vanguard students a perspective on racism that will be an eye-opening experience for a lot of them. And I know you're going to introduce yourselves in just a couple of minutes. We also want to thank Mrs. Bauer for moderating this discussion. In her former position at the Waco Foundation, she had a lot of experience doing this. And we know this is a topic about which she is passionate. So without further ado, I want to turn all of this over to Bauer.
Thank you, Mrs. Leslie. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'd like to thank each of you for welcoming us and for making this panel discussion possible. I'd like to begin by introducing our panelists. We're grateful to all of you for spending your time with us today. I'll briefly introduce them, but most importantly, I will allow them to introduce themselves so you'll get a better sense of who they are. I'll begin throughout the course of this panel discussion in alphabetical order, and we'll stick to that format for the beginning question just to make things simple, so you'll have an expectation and they will have an expectation of who will be speaking next. So with that, we'll begin with Maria Arevalo. She is the MAC Scholarships Coordinator at Waco Foundation. And next we have, let me reference my alphabetical chart. We have Rhett Dawson. He's the Vice President of Marketing at Insurors of Texas. We have Dr. Gilbert Gillum, the pastor of Living Word Church of God of Christ in Waco. We have Kaga, a Vanguard alumna of 1999 and CEO of Did. And then we have Cuevas Peacock, who is the Assistant Director of Community Relations and Public Wealth at Baylor University. So thank you all for being here. We're all really honored that you've taken the time today to address what is a challenging topic. The title of this panel discussion is Facing the Challenge of Racism. It's not an easy topic. It's certainly not one with easy answers, but we're just grateful that you're here today, and we'll get started with the questions. So I will start with you, Maria. Will you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you do in the community? If you could include how long you've lived in the Waco area, how you came to be here, and share any other details that you think are relevant for our students to hear.
Yeah, so thank you guys for having me. I'm Maria, I'm the MAC and Scholarship Coordinator here at Waco Foundation. So for any seniors watching this, I will be working closely with you because it's financial aid season. I am from Waco, born here, raised here. My family's been here. The only time I haven't lived in Waco is when I was in Austin for college for 4 years. But then I came back because the city means so much to me. Like I said, my family's here, friends are here. I've lived my whole life here. So this is really important to me. This topic is important to me, and especially because it's in my home. So I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you, Maria. All right, next, Rhett, if you could tell us a little bit about how you came to be in Waco and what you do here in the community.
I came originally from Africa to go to school here. I was born in Zimbabwe, which is a small country to the north of South Africa. And I went to Baylor starting in 2000, graduated, and then ended up living and working in Waco, which was a surprise to me. I didn't imagine I would spend this much time here. And I think for me, the reason I wanted to be involved is just because my life experience was a little different. I grew up in a country that was majority Black. I grew up after that country became independent. And so for most of my life growing up, the people that I knew and interacted with that had political power, that had economic power, looked very different to me. And so I think, racism is definitely an issue that has plagued Southern Africa. Just to the south of us was South Africa, where apartheid ended in 1994. So, I think the idea of equity and the idea of race and the idea of how that really plays into the life experience you have, I think it's important. So that's why I wanted to participate today.
Thank you, Rhett. Next, we'll have Dr. Gilbert Gillum. Dr. Gillum, if you could introduce yourself and tell us what you do in the community and how you came to be in Waco.
Good morning, everyone. I am a country boy from a little town called Gillum, Mississippi, down on the Gulf Coast, around, near Gulfport and Bay St. Louis. attended school, went into the military. The military brought me to Fort Hood. After leaving the military, I attended University of Maryland, Baylor, and then ended up in Waco, pastoring this church. And I just celebrated my 36th anniversary here at this church. And Waco is a wonderful little town and a lot of wonderful people. And I've enjoyed it working here very much, reaching out and interacting with the city officials and in the community, and working with Cuevas while he was in college, and he kept me busy. But I'm so thankful to be a part of this panel.
We're grateful to you as well, Dr. Gillum. Thank you. Katie, can you tell us, we clearly know that you went to Vanguard. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yes, I was born here in Waco. Well, actually, I was born in Temple, but I was raised here in Waco, and I went to St. Albans Episcopal School, and then I attended Vanguard, and I graduated in 2000. Nope, I just graduated in 1999. And then I went to the University of Maryland in College Park and graduated in 2003 with a degree in criminology, criminal justice, and government and politics. And racism is so systemic that it's something that my family encountered all the way from back in World War II, and probably we'll be able to expand on that a little bit more. But after college, I moved to Austin. I was there for 16 years, and I just moved back to Waco. And I'm so excited to just be reinvested in the city that I grew up. And I know that there's a lot of potential for us to really grow and be really kind humans. And so I'm really looking forward to being on this panel.
Thank you, Katie. We're glad you're here. And next we'll have Cuevas Peacock. Cuevas, I've mentioned that you're at Baylor University, but could you tell us more about how you came to be in Waco and what you did before you joined Baylor, please? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Thank you again, Catherine, for inviting me to serve on this panel. I'm originally from Port Arthur, Texas, Southeast Texas, and I've been in Waco since 2015. And I came here for opportunity. At that particular point in time, the opportunity to come here was to help others access economic opportunity, where I work with Citizen in Waco to create a program that taught entrepreneurs how to do the back end side of business. We got it up and started, we got up and running, called WeBo, and it's in its 5th cohort this year. And so that was the reason why I came here, to help others access the economic opportunity they have to advance their communities. And while doing that work, I was given another opportunity to stay here in Waco and be a community organizer with grassroots community development in the East Waco community, where I had a chance to work with great people like Reverend Gillum, and in schools and other neighborhood associations, just helping the people in the East Waco community get connected with the resources and get connected and get tapped into their ideas to make their own community better. Since that time, I have transitioned to Baylor University, where I am a part of their Solid Gold Neighbor Initiative. This is Baylor's intentional community engagement effort to really engage the Waco community in areas of health, education, economic development, city growth, and cultural wealth. And when I say cultural wealth, that really looks at how can the university engage Waco in a way that's equitable, in a way that increases access, in a way that celebrates all communities of color and that are present within the city itself. And so it's an exciting time here at the university where we're definitely trying to be as intentional as possible to really bridge the Baylor family and Baylor community with the Waco family, Waco community. And so it's something I'm excited to be a part of. I'm excited to join on this panel with you all as well.
Thank you, Cuevas. We're really delighted to have each of you here with us, and it's so interesting to learn about how you came to be in Waco, or if you started out here, but we're certainly glad that all of you are in Waco now. So we'll move on to our next question. And again, we'll do it in alphabetical order. So Maria, I will be starting with you. Could you tell us briefly, or with as much detail as you'd like, what made you accept this invitation to be part of the panel discussion today, and or why is this topic important to you?
I think when you have this conversation, it's super important to be honest. So being fully honest, I faced a lot of racism growing up here in Waco. And I went to a school where it was predominantly white students. So when I tried to talk to my friends about it, they were like, that doesn't exist here, because they just had a different experience than I did. So it was very isolating growing up as a student of color where I grew up. And so when I went to college, I actually decided my undergrad degree is in communication, but with a focus on rhetorical and cultural studies. And I'm currently getting my master's, and I'm still keeping that diversity and inclusion lens because it had such an impact on me. But I'm very blessed in the fact that my mother went to college, and so she knew that I wasn't going to learn about Latina history in schools. It's just the way that it is. And so she always taught me about my issues, about people that fought for me to be here. And so she would always tell me, don't give up, keep going. And so that's why it's important, because I want to foster that communication with any students who are in that place that I was, that you're not alone and it gets better. And being here at this panel, and I've spoken on a panel before, it just gives me a lot of hope. Whereas before I left Waco feeling jaded and feeling sad, I return with so much hope and so much motivation, because I see leaders who say, no, this is a problem, and we are working to come up with a solution, instead of saying, no, it doesn't exist. So that's why I'm here today, because I'm glad to team up with everyone and to hear from everyone, and to also, for any students that are watching, you guys are my passion. That's why I'm working in education. And for any students who feel isolated, who feel like they are experiencing the world differently than their peers, you're not alone. And that's why we're here today. And so that's why I wanted to talk. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Maria. So we'll move on again alphabetically to Rhett, Dawson. And Rhett, I'll repeat the question for your convenience. What made you accept our invitation to be part of this panel discussion today, and why is this topic important to you?
I think what really resonated with me, Catherine, is just how different my experience has been in Waco from what I experienced in Africa in terms of race relations. I think it just struck me. I guess I had a very different perception of America. My perception of America initially coming here from Africa was that it was a very open and inclusive society, and for the most part it is. I just think that, as I was a student at Baylor, I began to notice that there just wasn't, there was a very different attitude toward people of color than what I had experienced, and that was very sad to me. Again, my perception was very different. I think if you looked at my grade school picture, you'd be like, oh, there's the white kid. Because most of the people growing up look nothing like me, and I think society is so much richer for it. And I think that having a discussion around race, and just I think one of the misnomers in particular is this idea of just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And as I've been more involved in the community and in education here, you realize that people come into life with advantages. I think my experience would have been different if I was Black. I think people would have looked at me differently. The opportunities that I would have been given would have been different. And I think when you recognize that and you have some sensitivity toward it, it really changes how you see not only other people, but yourself and what you put emphasis on. And I think it's important. You're right. Those are hard conversations to have, but they're necessary conversations to I think, create a community and a society that we want our children to live in, that gives people opportunity and really lives up to the promise of what I believe America is.
Thank you so much, Rhett. All right, next we have Dr. Gillum. Dr. Gillum, could you tell us why you accepted our invitation today and why this topic is important to you?
Well, growing up in a deep South situation where racism was very much alive and well, and growing up during a period of time when there were not some of the stopgaps that we have now. I'm 70 years old. I grew up in the 50s, and when there were a lot of things that we experience now, or we don't have to deal with now, that we did then, because everything was so open, and it was almost like Black people were open game for whatever. And growing up with that, and then going to the military, finding out the same thing, and going to college at a deep South college in Poplarville, Mississippi. It was alive and well. And so I began to push back against that actually in my senior year of high school, and getting involved in some of the various crusades and things that were going on. And then moving forward to where I am now, I'm very excited to be a part of this, because I try to teach the young Black men in my congregation in the East Waco situation that, hey, you don't have to be stuck. You can use everything that you have to become all that you can be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gillum. I appreciate that insight.
Thank
Next,
you.
so did I cut you off at all? Okay. Hey, Katie, if you would please tell us why you accepted our invitation today, and why this topic is important to you, please.
So part of the reason I accepted this invitation is because I am a Vanguard alumna, and school holds a very special place in my heart, even though I've been out of Vanguard for over 20 years. But that was one of the reasons. And another reason is I feel definitely at this juncture in our American history, this is so important to talk about and open the lines of communication, and take time to just listen and hear other people's experience, and find out that people aren't that different from each other, but everybody does have certain backgrounds that need to be listened to. And part of my history is my father's father, my grandfather. He and his family lived in Oregon, in the Portland, Oregon area, and they were strawberry farmers. And if anybody who's been in Mr. Livingstone's World War II class, you might have seen actually a video of my grandfather from, I think, 2004, 2005. No, wait, maybe 2003. But his family, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, his family, there was an initiative that went out by the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that any man or woman or child of Japanese descent, be they American citizens or immigrants, were to be put into internment camps. And so they were taken from their home. And my family, for example, was moved to Minnejoka, Idaho, and they were actually put in like horse stalls, one per family. And that's, as an American citizen, this doesn't feel right, or didn't feel right. But the fear that was going on during World War II caused many repercussions, but especially for the Japanese Americans or Japanese immigrants. And so my grandfather ended up going to enlisting into the Army, and he was part of the 442 regiment. And that was an all Japanese American or Japanese unit. And they are almost highly decorated, and have many of their members received Congressional Medals of Honor and Bronze Stars, Purple Hearts. So part of this is just to give my experience, and also kind of like Rhett, growing up, I was in a predominantly white community and didn't ever really see myself as different, because I was born here, I grew up here, I went to the same schools as you, I went to the same churches as you. But once I got to college, I started seeing a lot of the differences, and how that might play into favoritism or getting certain advantages that maybe other people didn't. And so I'm very, very excited to be part of this panel, just to share my experience and my family's experience, and then also listen to our other panel members, and just try to foster understanding and an open heart.
Thank you so much, Katie. And last but never least, Cuevas, could you tell us why you accepted the invitation to participate today and then why it's important to you?
The least I can do. That's probably my easiest answer and my most straightforward answer. It's the least I can do. James Baldwin once said that all things faced cannot be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And so by constantly choosing to participate in these panels and to share my perspective and share my thoughts, to hear from others and connect with others, it is a way that we can take a very small step in trying to create the change we have to see in society. And then the other side of things is that, this panel is directed to our students and to our young people, to our younger people, I guess. And the reality is that more than likely, the changes I'll be seeing in life will not be accomplished in my lifetime, but it can be accomplished in yours. It can be accomplished in the students of Vanguard, and as they go out in society and create the impact and the changes they hope to see in the world change that they will accomplish. I hope to be able to impart in them some words, some words of wisdom, some words of perspective, some reasons why they should take a step back and realize that it's not about themselves only progressing, but ensuring that everyone around them is progressing as well, and that they have a role to play in really addressing and eliminating racism, eliminating the inequities that have been perpetuated throughout our society for so many years, so many centuries, since the beginning of time. And so, it's the least thing I can do. It allows me to do something small and really trying to create the change I want to see. And then lastly, and certainly not least, but most importantly, if you ask me, it gives me a chance to connect with our younger students, our next generation, who will be the ones to solve this problem and in this worldwide conundrum of racism that we're facing.
Thank you so much, Cuevas. We appreciate your being here. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn over the next question to Faith Regan. She is she's a senior at Vanguard and our student moderator. So Faith, if you'd like to take it from here with our next question, please. And then just a reminder, we'll begin again with Maria in alphabetical order for this question.
Hi, Ms. Arevalo. Can you give an example of a time that stands out in your memory when you experienced or observed racism or prejudice?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I went to school with predominantly white peers and white teachers. And I remember my senior year, I was applying for colleges and I applied for my #1 school. And I was super nervous about it. So I went to go talk to my favorite teacher during lunch and just told her how nervous I was and how I hoped I would get in. And I remember her saying, "Maria, don't worry, you're gonna get in." And when your favorite teacher tells you that, it gives you so much confidence. But then the next word she said, it just ripped the foundation under me, because she said, "You're Mexican. They need diversity points. You're gonna get in, affirmative action." And I remember just being like, but I work so hard, my grades are good, I volunteer, I'm involved, I do all these things. But I'm very lucky and privileged that my mother went to college and she was a teen mom. So my earliest memories are visiting my mom on campus at Baylor. She went to Baylor. She used to take me to the library. So she made college normal for me. So even though what my teacher said really it really hurt me, I am lucky enough that I still went to college. I got into my school. And even though her words, when I was sitting in my first class, I thought, am I just here because I'm looking around, I am one of the only students of color, but then I was, no, I belong here. I have a place here. And so that's the thing about racism, especially for young students who might be on the receiving end of racism, it can have the potential to stunt your growth. That could have stopped me. I could have given up, but any students that are watching, if you've been on the receiving end of something like that, you belong, you work hard, everything you earn. And so again, that's why right now I'm in graduate school getting my master's in education, because I know the importance that teachers have, the important role they play in a student's life. And so I want to make sure that doesn't happen to anyone else. And so that's something that I've encountered, but just reminding yourself that you have a place, that you belong, and to keep fostering change and to keep being kind. I recently met up with that teacher because we are friends on social media, and she saw that I spoke at a panel like this before. And we actually had lunch and we talked about it. So I think just having those conversations, being understanding, and just to all my students of color, like, you belong, and everything you have, you earned. So that's fine.
Thank you. Mr. Dawson, can you give an example of a time that stands out in your memory when you experienced or observed racism or prejudice?
I think, from my perspective, there are two contrasting examples that stick in my mind. Probably one of the most fixed in my mind is as a child, about 6 or 7. I remember going to South Africa. We had relatives that lived there. And at that time, South Africa was still operating under apartheid. And I'll never forget going to the beach, and it was whites only. It was a whites only beach, and there were signs everywhere. And I remember asking my parents, why are those signs there? And they found it hard to describe. They said, well, this is South Africa. If you're white, you live in one area. If you're black, you live in another. And I said, well, that's it was really hard to get my mind around that. And having seen that, it's always just stuck with me. The other example is a more recent example. I was in college, and I had a friend of mine, Walt Bass, who's from East Texas. He came out and spent a summer in Africa, in Zimbabwe. And at that time, Zimbabwe was going through land reform. It was very, very tense politically. And we went into a store, and he wanted to buy, I think it was chocolates or something. And the lady behind the counter refused to serve him, and she asked him to leave. And it just shocked him. And, I said, look, don't make a scene. We just go along with it, because, things, I'd been raised as a child never to question authority. Just go along with it. Don't get into trouble. If you get into trouble, you may not have any recourse. And so those are two examples that just stick in my mind of experiences that I've had personally.
Thank you. Dr. Gillum, can you give an example of a time that stands out in your memory when you experienced or observed racism or prejudice?
Well, as I said, growing up in Deep South Mississippi, I can remember as a child, a young man, I worked at a gas station, and we were all tire changers. And it seemed like from 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I was the only young black man there. There were 3 other young men there. They were all, they were Caucasian. Well, and it seemed like during the time that we were just doing our job, we got along well, busting tires and what have you. But when it came time for 12 o'clock lunch, the service station was connected to a restaurant. And so those guys could go right around the corner, go in the front door, whereas I had to go around the back and go to a window and get my hamburger. And that stayed with me for quite a long time. And then that's just one incident that stands out, though there have been many. But that one it still looms in my mind, having to go around the back, go to that window and get my hamburger and sit in the stall while those guys went right next door, went around the corner, went in the front door, got their hamburger, and could sit down and eat. And that has left just a lifelong memory of mine, because I roll it around in my head sometimes. So I think that would be one. But then going to school in Poplarville, Mississippi, my freshman year there, I registered that morning. They assigned me my room, went to lunch, came back, and all of my clothes were thrown all over the place, and they had spray painted them, and with big signs all over the room painted, "Go home, nigger," you don't belong here. And boy, that devastated me. So those were just two incidents that really just blew me away.